Master Sergeant Jack Turner adjusted his tactical vest one last time, the weight of nearly a quarter-century in uniform pressing down on him as he prepared for what was meant to be his final mission. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the rugged landscape outside the small town of Carlisle, nestled in the Pennines of northern England, miles away from the chaos of the military base just beyond. Jack's reputation preceded him. 24 years of unwavering service, a soldier's soldier, respected by peers and superiors alike. None more so than by his commanding officer, Colonel Thomas Whitman, a man whose iron-gray hair and weathered face told stories of battles fought and decisions made under fire. "Ready for this, Jack?" Thomas asked, his voice gravelly but steady, eyes a piercing blue that matched the cold steel of the knives strapped to his belt. "As ready as I'll ever be, sir," Jack replied, running a gloved hand over his well-worn M4 carbine. Standing at 6 feet 3 inches with broad shoulders honed by years of both combat and manual labor, Jack looked every part the seasoned soldier. His dark hair was flecked with silver at the temples, and his emerald eyes were steady, reflecting the grit of a man who'd seen humanity's darkest hours and chosen to stand against them. Their mission? Escort a convoy carrying vital medical supplies to a remote outpost near the Scottish border. A journey through winding mountain passes notorious for their treacherous weather and occasional troublemakers. Intelligence indicated minimal risk, but Jack's instincts, sharpened by decades of experience, warned otherwise. The convoy consisted of 3 armored Land Rovers loaded with medical equipment and critical pain medication intended for the field hospital. Thomas rode alongside Jack in the lead vehicle, while Staff Sergeant Brian Collins commanded the rear guard. The narrow, twisting roads offered little margin for error. "Tell me again about your daughter," Thomas said suddenly, breaking the tense silence as they navigated a particularly narrow cliffside stretch. Jack blinked, surprised by the rare moment of casual conversation during a mission. "Ellie's just turned 16, he said, a softness creeping into his gruff voice. "Smart as a whip, always helping out at the animal shelter. Top of her class at Carlisle High. Wants to study veterinary science at Edinburgh University." "And your wife? How's she managing the deployment?" Thomas asked, a subtle edge in his tone. Jack glanced at his commander, noting a flicker of something unspoken in those icy eyes. "Sarah's tough, always has been. Keeps the house running, works nights at the hospital, makes sure Ellie stays on track. I'm a lucky man, sir." What Jack didn't know was that Thomas had been exchanging letters with Sarah for months, initially under the pretense of updating her on Jack's welfare. Over time, the correspondence had grown more personal, too personal. Thomas, adept at exploiting vulnerabilities, had been weaving a web around Sarah, manipulating her loneliness while Jack risked his life far from home. Then came the explosion, a hidden improvised explosive device detonated beneath the narrow road, the blast designed not to kill but to disable, scattering debris and smoke like a sinister curtain. Jack's training instinctively took over. He dragged the dazed Thomas from the wrecked vehicle, barking orders to secure the perimeter as chaos unfolded. But as Jack applied pressure to a shallow head wound on Thomas, his eyes snapped open with a chilling clarity. Calculation. Cold intent. "Jack," Thomas whispered, voice barely above the roar of the storm. "The morphine. It's gone." Jack's gaze darted to the shattered cases where the controlled medications had been stored. "Impossible, they were built to withstand far worse than this. We need to talk." Alone. As Brian coordinated evacuation efforts, Thomas pulled Jack aside. The conversation that followed would haunt Jack for years. "The morphine was never meant for that outpost," Thomas said steadily. "It was a transaction. Certain people high up want it moved without military oversight." Jack's blood ran cold. "You're a good soldier, Jack. Too good. You ask questions. You notice things. You do what's right, even when it's inconvenient. That makes you a liability." Before Jack could respond, the mask slipped back on. Thomas began accusing Jack of confusion and disorientation after the blast. Within hours, Jack was under investigation for the missing morphine, with Thomas's testimony as the linchpin. The speed of the proceedings was the first sign that the game was rigged. The narrow mountain road stretched ahead under a darkening sky, the echo of the explosion still ringing in Jack Turner's ears as he faced the betrayal that would shatter everything he had built. Little did he know, The real battle was only just beginning. 6 weeks later, Jack sat in a sterile courtroom at Fort Langley, a sprawling military base nestled in the English countryside, where once he had trained fresh recruits. Now, beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, his 24 years of service were unraveling thread by thread. Presiding over the tribunal was Colonel Richard Hawthorne, a man whose cold, hawk-like gaze cut through the silence like a scalpel. Flanked by 2 stern-faced officers, Hawthorne embodied the grim finality of military justice. Master Sergeant Turner, Hawthorne intoned, voice resonating with authority. You stand accused of conspiracy to divert controlled substances, dereliction of duty, and conduct unbecoming of a non-commissioned officer. How do you plead? Jack's voice was steady, though his heart thumped like a war drum. Not guilty, sir. His military-appointed defense lawyer, Captain Simon Blake, was competent but clearly outmatched by the prosecution's meticulously crafted case. They painted Jack as a desperate soldier, scheming to sell military-grade painkillers to fund his daughter's university fees. A narrative so absurd it might have been comical if it weren't so devastating. Thomas Whitman's testimony was a masterclass in manipulation. Dressed immaculately in his regimental blues, his medals gleamed under the courtroom lights. Every word dripped with reluctant disappointment, weaving a story of a soldier gone astray. Turner was acting strangely in the weeks leading up to the mission, Thomas said smoothly. He asked detailed questions about the medical supplies, especially the controlled substances. When pressed, he mentioned financial struggles and his daughter's college expenses. Jack's stomach twisted as the prosecutor presented fabricated communications logs, supposedly proving contact with local dealers. The star witness was Brian Collins, Jack's once trusted subordinate, now a man shackled by his own secrets. Sir, I noticed Sergeant Turner was nervous, Brian testified, avoiding Jack's gaze. He kept checking his phone, which was unusual. I thought it was odd, but, well, I had my own problems. What Jack didn't know was that Thomas had exploited Brian's mounting gambling debts, dangling a Faustian bargain. Testify against Jack or lose everything. Despite valiant efforts from Captain Blake, the defense crumbled under the weight of deceit. Character witnesses lauded Jack's integrity, but the prosecution twisted even his exemplary record into proof of cunning duplicity. Colonel Hawthorne's verdict was swift and brutal. Guilty on all counts. 25 years in military prison, demotion to private, forfeiture of all pay and benefits, and a dishonorable discharge. Jack felt a cold void open inside him. Not for himself, but for the betrayal of everything he believed in. As he was escorted from the courtroom, Thomas approached, his polished shoes clicking ominously on the marble floor. I'm sorry it had to come to this, Jack, he said, voice loud enough for others to hear. Then, leaning close, a venomous whisper. Sarah sends her regards. We've grown quite close since you've been away. Jack's hands were bound, but his eyes burned with silent fury. Thomas stepped back, satisfied that the message had landed. The man Jack had once called a friend had become his greatest enemy. Outside the courtroom, the rain began to fall. A cold, relentless drizzle that mirrored the storm raging within Jack Turner. The battlefield had shifted from rugged mountain passes to the cold halls of justice. But the war was far from over. The military correctional facility at Blackmore was a place whispered about in hushed tones. A grim outpost nestled deep within the desolate moorlands of northern England. Its isolation was absolute. Miles from the nearest village, surrounded by fog-shrouded hills that seemed to swallow sound itself. For 18 months, Jack Turner had been confined here, each day a test of endurance, discipline, and will. Colonel Alfred Chadwick, the facility's warden, was a towering figure with a grizzled beard and eyes that missed nothing. A career military police officer, he had seen soldiers broken by circumstance and hardened by resolve. Jack was different, unbroken, even sharpened by imprisonment. Turner, Chadwick called out as Jack finished his rigorous afternoon workout in the yard, his voice carrying over the cold stone walls. Yes, sir, Jack replied, wiping sweat from his brow, muscles taut beneath the faded gray prison fatigues. Chadwick studied him, noting the unyielding focus in Jack's emerald eyes. You've changed. Not softened, not broken, sharper even. What's your secret? Meditation? Or are you just plotting escape routes in your head? Jack smirked faintly. A bit of both, sir. Walk with me, Chadwick said, leading Jack along the perimeter fence, the wind tugging at their coats. The warden's tone shifted, serious now. I've been looking into the circumstances that landed you here. Something about your case doesn't sit right. Jack kept his expression neutral, but inside, a flicker of hope stirred. Tell me about Colonel Whitman, Chadwick prompted. My former CO. He testified against me, Jack replied, voice tight. Chadwick nodded slowly. He's done well for himself since your conviction. Promoted to brigadier, now working at the ministry overseeing special operations logistics. Rumor is he's got some interesting personal connections too. Jack's eyes narrowed. Chadwick continued, lowering his voice. Your wife remarried 6 months ago. Whitman is now your daughter's stepfather. The words landed like a blow, but Jack's military discipline kept his face impassive. Inside, a cold fire kindled. They walked past layers of security until reaching a small, nondescript office bristling with encrypted communication gear. I've uncovered things about Whitman that will chill you, Chadwick said, activating a terminal. Financial records show millions of pounds of military equipment sold off the books, profits vanishing into offshore accounts. Soldiers who ask too many questions get reassigned to dangerous posts or worse. Jack absorbed the data, mind racing. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Chadwick's gaze locked on his. Because I took an oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Whitman is a domestic enemy. Official channels are compromised. Too many of his people are in powerful positions. Jack's pulse quickened. What do you propose? Chadwick's smile was grim. Officially, you're a convicted criminal serving a long sentence. Unofficially, I believe in justice. Sometimes it requires unconventional methods. He slid a secure phone across the desk. Your former lawyer, Grant Mason? He's been investigating your case on his own time. Found new evidence about your family. He's been trying to reach you. Jack's fingers closed around the phone, heart pounding. After months of silence, a lifeline. Chadwick's final words echoed as he left the room. Whitman made a mistake keeping you alive. That mistake is about to cost him everything. Outside, the more stretched, endless and gray, but inside Jack Turner, a predator had awakened. The crackle of static gave way to a weary, familiar voice. Jack, thank God you answered. Grant Mason sounded exhausted, the strain in his tone unmistakable after months of fruitless effort. They've been blocking my calls. Whitman's people don't want you hearing this. Jack's grip tightened around the secure phone, the weight of the moment settling over him like a storm cloud. I'm glad to hear your voice too. Grant, Jack said, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Chadwick told me you've been digging into my case. More than digging, Grant replied, urgency sharpening his words. I've built a case strong enough to make the prosecution weep. But that's not why I'm calling. Jack's heart skipped. What's going on? There was a pause, heavy with unspoken dread. It's about Ellie. Whitman's at your house right now. He's done something terrible. Jack's breath caught. Explain. 3 days ago, Ellie came to me, bruised and terrified, Grant said quietly. She's been investigating Whitman for months. Kids notice what adults miss, and Ellie's sharp. She's gathered evidence, phone records, secret meetings, financial trails. Enough to bring Whitman down. Jack's mind raced. Pride battled with rage. His daughter had inherited his courage, and now her life was in danger. Where is she now? Safe, for now. I've got her with a trusted security team, former military friends who owe me favors. But she insisted I get all this to you. She believes you'll know what to do. Jack's jaw clenched. Can this evidence hold up in court? Absolutely. She's been meticulous. Timestamps, digital signatures, chain of custody, the whole package. She even has recordings of Whitman confessing, made with covert cameras she installed herself. Jack's tactical mind shifted gears. Legal battles could take years. Ellie's life was on the line now. Whitman knows she's got the evidence, Grant warned. He's searching the house, escalating his threats. Ellie escaped, ran 6 miles in the dead of night to my office. He doesn't know where she is now, but he's using every resource to find her. He spun a story, Ellie's a runaway at risk of self-harm. That lets him pull in social services and police without suspicion. Jack's voice hardened. He's using the system against us. He's planning to disappear soon, Grant added. Liquidating assets, closing accounts. He's got days, maybe a week, before he vanishes to a country with no extradition. Jack's mind raced through scenarios, calculating risks and timelines. Whitman had underestimated both him and Ellie, and that would be his downfall. Grant, keep Ellie safe and get all that evidence into a secure, transmissible format. Can you do that? I'm on it. But Jack, what's your plan? Justice, Jack said simply. Whitman destroyed my life, stole my family, threatened my daughter. It's time he learned the cost of underestimating me. As the call ended, Jack stood by the small window of the warden's office, eyes fixed on the gray moor stretching beyond. The cold wind whispered promises of retribution. The hunted was becoming the hunter. The fading light of dusk cast long shadows across the sprawling grounds of Blackmore Military Correctional Facility as Colonel Alfred Chadwick led Jack Turner through a maze of dimly lit corridors. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence punctuated only by the soft hum of security systems and distant footsteps echoing off cold stone walls. Walk with me again, Turner, Chadwick said, his voice low and steady, carrying the weight of decades spent navigating the fine line between order and chaos. Jack nodded, muscles taut beneath his prison fatigues, senses sharpening as his mind flicked through memories of escape and evasion training. Urban operations in London, survival drills in the Scottish Highlands, clandestine passages through enemy lines. Why the walk? And why now? Jack asked, curiosity mingling with caution. Chadwick swiped his security card, opening a heavy steel door marked, authorized personnel only. Inside, instead of dusty maintenance equipment, lay an arsenal that would make even the most elite special forces envious. Suppressed pistols, night vision goggles, tactical radios, explosives, and a range of surveillance gear meticulously organized and ready for deployment. 23 years of confiscating contraband has its perks, Chadwick said with a wry smile. Soldiers try to smuggle the odd thing in here, but paperwork loses track of a few bits and pieces. You're welcome to take whatever you need. Jack's eyes flicked over the weapons with professional appraisal, the familiar weight of a suppressed pistol bringing a flicker of calm amid the storm. Chadwick's tone grew serious. Whitman's desperation is making him sloppy. He's mobilized his network, but they don't know you're coming. He slid a digital tablet across the table, displaying intercepted phone calls, financial transactions, and movement patterns pointing to a secluded compound nestled in the rugged mountains of the Lake District. That's where your former CO and his closest associates are holed up. 6 men, all integral to his operation. Take them out and you decapitate the whole network. Jack studied the data, calculating. The compound was isolated but defensible, perfect for hosting high-value meetings, but vulnerable to a well-planned assault. And my daughter? Jack asked, voice tight. She's not there. Whitman's keeping her location close to his chest. But if you get him, you'll get what you need. Jack swallowed hard. You're asking me to escape, to hunt down a brigadier general and his cronies. That's a suicide mission. Chadwick's eyes didn't waver. Officially, you're a prisoner serving a 25-year sentence. Unofficially, I'm a soldier who swore to defend this country, no matter the cost. He handed Jack a set of keys and a security card. Tonight, during the shift change, the system will glitch. Sensors will give false readings, the duty officer will be distracted by a family emergency, and backup systems will fail. You'll have approximately 8 hours before they realize you're gone. Jack pocketed the keys, mind already shifting into operational mode. And if I get caught, you go back to your cell to finish your sentence. No one here will know I helped. Chadwick's final words hung in the air. You were a good soldier, Turner. What you do tonight will prove it. Outside, the desert of northern England's moorlands stretched cold and unforgiving. But inside Jack Turner, a fire had been lit. A mission not just for survival but for justice.